I want to work on the oceans. All right, so do your studies.
When we came and sat and we'd be like, okay, what are we going to work on today? You know, we would sit on this step here and look at the wall and talk about what area we would focus on. And then Al would say, well, you know, I think this might work better over here instead of here. And he'd have to convince me a couple times, I think. And, all right. And but it worked out, you know, and it was, the water was a big part of that and the flow of it, and there was so much.
Not everything is on the same plane, and not everything is looking at every same area. Like, we try to angle each person so no matter where you're at in the mural, someone's going to be, hey, looking out for you. It's bringing you into that area.
And then we put in Pablita Velarde's like elements that were they were inspired by her book, Stories That My Grandfather Told Me, and she had the origin story on the cover of the book where people are doing their creation story. They're walking, and it's the stories of that. So it really does go back far in time, but also looking to the future. I think that's you know, if when you're going somewhere, you got to know where you come from, and I think that's important.
There's lots of circles, and there's a few center points with the horizon line from Pablita Velarde's flower. In the center of her flower, there's radiating angles coming out. So there's triangles, pyramids, like you're saying. There's lots of shapes, as well as from Spider Woman's dress. From the center of that, there's also angles that are radiating out of that. So there's a diamond right in the center that is always going to be bringing your eye. So you could literally take rulers and see how carefully that we executed this so that it was flawless. And I think we had the challenge of not being able to walk back in a mural. And that was the difficult challenge, was not being able to walk 30 feet and really get the perspective and idea of what an artist needs for that size of scale. So we had to get our math out, and thanks to Colleen and myself, we really took time to make sure that it flowed so perfectly, even down to the shape of the hummingbird. So all the angles, there's lots of angles that are leading the eye up and down and around and over through the ocean waves and through the crystals. So everything was there, not by chance, including the hummingbird. The roundness of it, it also coincides with the first circle around Pablita Velarde's circle. Again, flowers. So everything is radiating around itself. So we really took time to make sure that we could tell so much of a story. In 4 years, we kept, oh, we should put this person in. And I would always say, no, damn it, like, no. Like, and then so, because it was a matter of where are we going to sit them to where they look natural in the sense that they looked at ease, that we didn't Photoshop them. And every source came from somewhere different. So in order for me to put, this next to that person, and for Colleen to say, well, let's put Grandma Brown and these kids here, it was many conversations to say, how is it going to work logistically? And I think, thank you very much. Like, we were happy with the overall result. I think because it flows, and it's a hard area, but it's a weird area. The neighbor Al, his name was Al, who used to live here. He rest in peace. He passed, but yeah, good people. He brought a lot of humor and love, and he looked after this mural like it was his own, and he called it his own.
Yeah.
And one day he said, hey, come here, I want to show you something. So we went into his living room, and we got to see the view that he sees, and it was only maybe 6 feet further back in the space where we could see. And it was the moon and the mountains, and it was an entire. I said, Al, we just added like 40 miles to your view. You do not have a blank wall in front of you. And he laughed, and so it was just really cool. Like, I think that part of it was, there was a lot of humor and a lot of love, but also a lot of math, and how we've connected it all was also another part of the magic, was understanding how all of these timelines coincide. And I think that was the cool thing, was knowing that there are stories that were carried deep within us, and then all the way up to, current modern day history, even down to like having having people that are alive or were alive very recently. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. Yeah.
Going into the past, I found out too that when the Navajos did the long walk, there was actually 54 of them. That when they crossed the river, they were likely crossing the river. That was one of the points that they crossed the river. So to me, that's part of that connection with my history as a Navajo, as Dene. And that's why I did the studies of the children at the long walk, and also included my great-grandmother, Mary Brown, in this. Ehasba is her Indian name. That's her over here in front of the fire, tending the fire, because her grandmother, her mom walked back from the long walk when she was 4. So these are actual studies of children of photographs that I did of children who were at Fort Sumner and were birthed from that. And to me, that was kind of about survival, being able to overcome things. She was really powerful and strong, and she lived to be about 100 and, well, no one really knew. So I've heard the age range of between 108 to 113 years old. That's how old she was when she passed. And I was 16 years old when she passed.
It's a cool space, and I think knowing all the history that happened here, good and also terrible and horrible, there's a lot of healing in this, and it's a counterculture against all the other everything else that's happening. So I think it's good. General,
Yeah.
fierce woman. She was one of the original 3. That was
Mayan.
yeah. One person that stood out to me that is local here is Adela Martinez, and she's the woman that has a number 2 on her arm that's looking fierce with glasses. We chose her specifically because she has history to Barelas, including a stone's throw away from this mural is her home, and her family resides there, and we think that we wanted to represent her in a portrait to honor the historic things that she's done for this area, including resiliency and including understanding what it is to have a home, and to understand that. Colleen touched on that earlier. Where are you from versus where are you now? And I think her statement of what her home meant to her here was larger than life, and I think it's definitely a big lesson and value that we should take on. So her portrait is really awesome, and I think it was very special that we put her in. We chose it from there was a few photographs of her. In one photograph, she was facing off against, I think, mounted police. And then another photograph, she was also there, but it was also an encounter. In other words, her portraits were coming from an encounter of people trying to take her out of her home, trying to expel, trying to eliminate that narrative. And she said, hell no, over my dead body. And I think that needs to be that type of, yeah, where the cultural center is. Yeah, National Hispanic Culture. Yeah.
Her house is
So-
still there.
So a museum to preserve a history of people, it's backwards. So I think I love that her home is still there. It's a testament to resiliency in our nature, and she needs to be recognized in this area, especially if she's here and her family. Give props and respect. We even painted her in the other mural that we completed on Hazeldean. The second is we painted a portrait of her, but it was a portrait of her home. So you can also go see her house, because that is also a portrait of that person. And I think that's one person that definitely gives me fire as a person, as an artist, and learning my culture. And also Maria Martinez, the woman holding the pot with the water coming out of it. For me, I study hands and people's faces, and I think hands are the same way as if you're looking at someone's face. You can tell what they do, how they are, who they are, I think. And painting her hands really was an experience, not only just the technical proportions of trying to make it look, but also they're very warm hands, and it made me think of all the ancestors and the women that I have in my own life. It reminded me of my own grandma's hands. So it was a beautiful experience to understand that, and to try to do my best job representing these people and their legacies and their history towards that.
That's Spider Woman and her manifestation on Earth and weaving time. And I did that also to kind of remember where I came from too, with my uncle, Uncle RC and stuff. Spider Woman is one of, for Diné, it's one of our Diyen Diné, the holy people. And she's in our creation stories and interacts with the twins, the hero twins in our stories, Nayet and Izgana Twabajishin, Monster Slayer and Child Born for Water. And I also think of her as the weaver of time. And so she's the only person in this mural who's not flesh colored. That's because she's spirit. And her manifestation on earth is actually, I put her out of that cave at the end as a tarantula. Because Ganje, the month of October, the 13th moon, is when the tarantulas come out, and so it's all kind of
What
connected.
do you think the Gormans would say about this painting? Carl and RC.
Oh, I think they would like it. I think, they'd probably find something funny to tease me about.
Like such
because
as?
they're jovial people. They were happy people, and they were. I remember when I was interviewing Carl, just looking at some really funny cartoons about RC's work. So I think that humor, that helps. That's something that has helped Navajos in general to also, that Indian humor helps to deal with the challenges of living in society and life today and the hardships that life brings. And so sometimes all you can do is laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously.
At some point in time, we also changed this narrative. Like, this also had other stories on this as well. And I think that's the cool part about it, is that there's different stories. Again, it's your timeline. It depends on how you're identifying what's happening and who your timeline is. That's the main thing. I love all the timelines that are happening in this, because it opens up the option of the future as well. Like, I think that's the cool part about it. That's how I see it.
And so I learned a lot in this process, I think, and I just have always loved to learn, and sharing that love of learning, I think, is really important. And I hope that this sparks curiosity in people to learn and know about the history and of New Mexico, because it's an amazing place. And even I would even go so far as to say that Mexico should be New Mexico, because the Mexica people are Uto-Aztecan people, and they came from here. They came from the Utah area, from the Four Corners area, and their stories are very similar to the stories down here, and they have a migration story that comes from here. And so the pueblos here, they were here, So those are my thoughts.
It was a large process. It took years. And I think that's the cool thing, is that it's still in process.
Have you ever worked on a mural that has been that engaging to you as an artist over such a long period of time?
I can't say I've been on another mural project that was 4 years long plus. No, this has been probably, and I think this is probably like my biggest project undertaking for like how I had to approach it in my own experience. So it was good, and I think that's why it was working at it in such a careful way. I think that was cool. And I had set the intention out for myself to want to paint murals because I saw the impact and power of them. Years and years and years before, I just set it out like, oh, I want to paint a mural. And it's really cool how things come to fruition if you're really on a good path and setting that up for yourself. And I figured out that I like doing this style. It's not going to look the same for everybody. So I think that was special for me to find that and find other people that were dedicated like that.